Hello and welcome to the Recursive podcast. Today it's me, Georgi Nenov, leading the conversation, and my guest is Svetozar Georgiev, co-founder of Telerik Academy, Campus X, and a business angel. Thank you for being on the podcast with us.
Thank you. The pleasure is all mine.
It's an impressive story from back in the days when Telerik was founded by you, Vasil, Hristo, and Boyko. And nowadays, basically, you're building a community following the massive success of the Telerik to Progress deal. And therefore, I am starting with the community questions that we have prepared. How did different communities in your life shape your personality and have influenced your professional and personal development? I'm coming to a place where you form Campus X, place where communities grow.
Sure, that's a great question. You know, probably I was first exposed to a true community in the pure sense of the word at my university, the American University in Bulgaria. There I really felt what a community is like. We were a very small, at that time, university. Our class was 100 people, so the whole university was probably 400, 500 max. So we knew each other, and it was very exciting and invigorating for me to see so many people from different backgrounds, but with shared values and drive, working for the betterment of the university and for the betterment of themselves. It was great to see how you could be friends with this group of people, but also how you can interact in a professional manner, because you could not be friends with all of them. You could have fun, and you could also be very serious, participate in the governance of the university, and later on actually remain friends and remain really tightly connected many years after graduation. I graduated 21 years ago, but I still keep connections with a good deal of the people I met there. Some of them became my colleagues at work. With some others, I am just, a friend on a personal level. And, there is really a sense of pride of belonging to this community. We call ourselves AUBGers, and, you're one for life. Even, these days, it's really exciting to see how the power of this student community, the alumni community, can really shape and alter the direction of the university for the better. And this is actually the true definition of community. A community is a group that can have a massive effect on the environment in which it operates. In a similar manner, I see the power in the community of my high school, which sort of formed a little bit later on after I graduated. But, these days, my high school, the Technical School for Electronic Systems, TUES in Bulgarian, actually is alive and is thriving because of the alumni, because of the students, because the faculty and staff, because of the groups of IT companies that is supporting this university. And from an institution that faced a good deal of problems and was actually even threatened to no longer be because of legal threats and all that stuff, because this was an experimental school which was not really well regulated in the law. Actually, the community came together and reignited this school. And it currently is number 3 most sought after school in Sofia. This is impressive. All the special subjects are taught by former alumni. So actually the people who graduated now have come back and became teachers, part-time, of course, because they're also working. The companies are interacting, providing, experience on the job, graduate projects and all that stuff. So you can see how actually the school became as strong just because of the community. One other, of course, very good example is the company Telerik itself, because it was a group of more than 800 people by 2014. So it was more than, you know, colleagues and people working together. It was a true family, true community. And actually, I think that this is one of the reasons why we were so successful, because we really respected and worked for the betterment of the whole family, which of course produced business results as well. And of course, the whole startup ecosystem that you know, originated in Bulgaria probably 10, 15 years ago is now a very good example of community, because people are working together, sharing knowledge, and really are passionate of how to succeed together as a group and be competitive on the global scene.
When did you realize that the community has such power in business context?
It was just by observing and actually sometimes not believing what is truly happening, because the community, I think, has a positive effect on two levels, quantitative and qualitative. On the quantitative side of things, it's a pure numbers game. When a group of people exert, you know, a small amount of effort to help for the common cause, this become one very big, powerful result at the end of the day. But then also on the qualitative side of things, when you really need better results, better thought process, better assessment, you'd better get bigger group of people and not really rely on the opinions of single individuals. And also probably on a third level, there is this contagious effect in the positive aspect of the work, because people become really invigorated and driven by the efforts of the other people in the group. So this collective energy is actually multiplied as the group grows. And you know, for me, the power of drive and purpose and belonging to a group is super strong and can really produce miracles.
You already defined it in a wonderful way, a group driven by a common goal, something that every one individual wants to achieve. You can see it clearly in the startup ecosystem, but we don't find it at large in our society. Why is that? Can we somehow change that?
Yeah, it's another good question. Well, I think in reality we find it in society, but you know, for a community to really be efficient and effective, it has to be more or less homogeneous. And when it's not, it becomes more tricky. Not impossible, but more tricky. Probably one good example is, you know, when you try to decide something with your neighbors, the so-called etajna собственост, it's almost impossible. There is always somebody who wants something else or who is not in agreement with the rest of the group. And actually, that's why there are regulations how we can force a decision and move on. Same in society at large. I mean, we've seen many good examples of how people become organized, get together, and march forward for a certain cause. It's just difficult when you have a really big group of people, and if this homogeneity is somehow no longer a fact. It's just really hard if you don't preserve this core DNA, core values, to have a really tight-knit community. Of course, you know, the world knows very big and successful communities, but it's difficult to manage those. I mean, even the EU, when it was small and coherent, it was very easy to march forward. And now as it grows, because it has to grow, it becomes more difficult to manage and come into agreement on certain topics. So it's just a generic challenge. But I really think that we're seeing increasingly more and more civil society coming into life in Bulgaria, and different important questions and pain points in the society being addressed by different communities. So I'm generally an optimist in that direction.
Previously, you started talking about the values. Purpose was one of them. Another value for me is giving back. They have this way of thinking to give back to what you believe that has helped you. AOBG was one such an example in your life. So this is some kind of philanthropy that you're supporting the university that gave you not only community, but also skills and knowledge. So why is philanthropy important to you?
Well, on a purely emotional level, I feel good when I'm helping others and giving back. I honestly actually feel better when I'm giving than when I'm receiving something. And I'm pretty sure this is fundamental psychology, and many people are like this. But more important than that is the fact that I try to act as a catalyst, not just provide funding or in-kind help, which would then disappear, or which is not enough to move the needle. I try to invest in areas where this could start an avalanche, where I can, tip something and then it somehow can grow and be sustainable. And I accidentally used the word invest a second ago, but I really treat my philanthropical activities as an investment in the future, investment into organizations or in communities which I might not get direct return in some way, and that's not the goal, but I'll certainly get an indirect return by enjoying better environment, better society, or just knowing that I manage somehow to help others alter their lives for the better. So for me, philanthropy should not be just charity, but rather a meaningful investment in the right directions, which could provide result. That's why education is really high on my list, because it provides scale. With a little help, you can produce massive results down the road. Of course, 5, 10, 15 years down the road, but it's really meaningful investment. You have true meaningful return on investment here. And when I pick the causes and the organizations to support, I also really look for professionalism on the other end, because again, if the certain organization or activity is not managed professionally, money can be lost very easily, or just not put into work in an efficient manner. So again, I look to extract maximum effect out of these things, and that's why I and others require proper management, KPIs, impact assessment, and this is important for organizations who are recipients of donations, because this will help them get better, just like a business. They need to be operating in a really professional way so that the output result is as big as possible.
How did you develop such a mindset about giving back and investing in the future? Yeah. You're basically saying investing in the future.
Yeah, well, I think it's probably just my personality, or it certainly evolved. I was certainly not probably trained or educated this way. Back in socialism, giving back and philanthropy was not really high on the agenda, which is, it is what it is. But, comparing Bulgaria to other countries like the US, kids from very early age are actually trained to have this mentality. And I firmly believe that this can be trained. We just need good examples. We need promotion of these examples. We need explanation exactly of this, that it's not just, charity so that you can feel good that you did something right, but you should be really mindful and intelligent as to where you put your money and how they can produce result. And why is this important, and why this versus this cause is actually more important. So this, like any other skill, or yeah, it's probably a skill or a reflex, could be taught. And that's why it's important to talk about those things and to share those views.
Is this the only way to multiplicate the culture of giving back, so there are more people that give back?
I cannot really think of other examples. Sometimes we are probably being too hard on, Bulgaria or our fate, but the reality is that we are just starting from a very, low benchmark compared to other countries. So yeah, I think we need time. We need exposure, publicity, and little by little, I think civil acceptance and actually expectations for such behavior will elevate.
Awesome. And more or less, we are tipping our feet into education, because you previously mentioned that education is one of the things that has the highest return on investment. What do you believe is the purpose of the education in the new economy? Is it building skills or shaping mindset and building attitude? Is it more about the personality buildup or knowledge?
It's certainly not much about knowledge anymore, because all the knowledge is in your pocket. All the data is there. You need some fundamental knowledge, of course, but these days it's much more important that you spend your time at school, professionally on the job, and in other different ways of educating yourself to gain skills and like you said, mindset. Because if you have the mindset and the skill set to be curious, to be creative, to be able to solve problems, to be willing to gain knowledge constantly, but adaptively, just as much as you need and in the areas that you need, then you'll be able to again extract and find the information, the people who can help you, so that you're successful with whatever you're doing. Just amassing huge quantities of factual knowledge is, on one hand, for me, not really natural, because the human brain has a very strong built-in filter. We are just designed to forget things, and that's the nature of who we are. So I'm a very good example. I don't remember dates. I'm terrible with names. I remember principles because I like to understand how things work. And I think I'm curious. So whenever I need something, I either try to find it myself or find somebody who knows about it and just solve my problem this way. So this is the role of schools today. It's more of an institution, both for elementary schools, high schools, universities. Those are institutions who need to be much more adaptive to the specifics of the people, the kids or grown-ups in the class, to be as individual as possible in their approach, and to build characters, skill sets, mentalities, rather than just poor knowledge, which is endless and not necessary. We need to sort of provide compasses especially for younger kids, explain how the world operates and what could be the potential, paths that people can take, and leave them on, rather than try to shape people, attach degrees, and sort of label people that you need to become this and this because you have this degree. And I think the whole notion of degrees these days is actually eroding, and that's why we have a lot of companies promoting the so-called nano degrees, bits and pieces of this monolithic thing that used to be a 5-year program or a 4-year program, which also every year is changing and adapting, because the world is changing so quickly, especially technology, but not only that. So, what was a degree 5 years ago is no longer the adequate degree, and it should not be a degree, but rather a combination of nano degrees, which will be the best for your particular self, for the path that you've chosen forward. And I think actually this is great. We are, especially now with those disruptions that COVID introduced, I think we are at a very interesting tipping point that would disrupt especially higher education as we know it, because it doesn't seem, at least to me, adequate in the world of 2021.
having you here today with us and sharing your knowledge and experience and thoughts. It's like a mentorship session, actually. I always think of of the podcast in general as ways to communicate with people that you cannot meet on the street and have one-on-one conversation with. But it's some kind of a mentorship. So what do you get out of such occasions where you can share your experience and knowledge?
Yeah, I fully agree that, for me, mentorship is truly a bidirectional process. I gain just as much, in many cases, even more than I provide. But yeah, seriously, I'm truly impressed by, the mindset and the level of professionalism of entrepreneurs these days. So oftentimes when we have sessions or just casual chats and stuff, I learn a lot of new things, and more interestingly, I'm really challenged to probably rethink what I know or what I think I know, because I'm interacting with people who are really open-minded and super driven at a relatively early age. So for me, this process is really, really enriching. Yeah. This for me is again type of nano degrees, each and every time. So yeah, it's an important process, but it's also very enriching to me. Also, on an emotional level, I really feel good when I am able, probably with an advice or sharing a story from our experience, to help somebody go through a particular obstacle faster, more efficiently, or don't make a mistake at all. Because this way, I feel that what I know is just not staying just here. It's not going to waste, but it's useful to other people. Just, like, I don't know, a father or a grandfather likes to pass the knowledge to the next generation. Not a grandfather yet, but I think I have a sense of that feeling even today.
And if you're just as passionate about innovation as we are, hit subscribe for the Recursive podcast on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. We're everywhere.
This is wonderfully describing one of my favorite habits of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of the Highly Effective People. Habit number 4, always think win-win. It's not that you enjoy doing something, you win through the exchange, and then you share and pay forward what you know. And therefore, the people that are gathering this knowledge can make their companies and startups better and impact more people. So it's amazing. Did you have any important mentors in your life that had an influence over you? Because you started about grandfathers, and usually they are the first mentors, like knowingly or not knowingly. They are.
Sure. Yeah. Well, of course, the family is super important in shaping you as a person, more so than as a professional expert. But I think professionally and even personally, I've been probably mostly influenced by my fellow partner Zarko. We shared the co-CEO role of Telerik, went on this fantastic but brutal journey, went in many fights together, and his vision, moral compass, values, and just the sheer scope of his ideas were always very inspirational to me. So yeah, I think he's probably the single informal mentor that mostly affected me, both professionally and personally, and he continues to do so even today, of course.
Amazing. Do you think that such a relationship within the co-founders of the company, between all 4 of you and of course the people that were coming after to grow to 800 people, made the Telerik a successful company?
Yeah, the dynamics between the 4 of us was very interesting, because probably it's not very obvious from the outside, but we are quite different people, the four of us, which actually provides for very good and enriching conversations and discussions, because it's really boring when you have groupthink, one idea, everybody's in agreement. With us, it was quite the opposite. But that being said, we had a very high degree of sort of respect for each other. So whatever we would be discussing or sharing, among the four of us, we would always come out with a common statement or a position in front of the rest of the group, because you need this sense of agreement and determination that you know what you're doing. So we had even between us probably a principle of management that Jeff Bezos labeled later on. We didn't know it by the time, but we just practiced that disagree and commit. So even if somebody disagrees, he would commit to support the chosen direction by the other three people, or the other two. It might be 2 by 2, and not sabotage the whole movement or say I told you so at the end if it fails. And this would provide a very good feeling of security that we are all united, although probably we're not 100% sure about something. And this allowed us to actually go through very difficult decisions and times together. And of course, it was not just the four of us. That should be noted boldly, that we relied on many other people. We had sort of like layers of and circles within the circles at Telerik to actually calibrate our direction or gain support even for our opinions, because then those people would be the ambassadors of what we wanted to sort of communicate down towards everybody within the company, all our colleagues. So it was a very healthy dynamics and really rich experience, just because we were, at the end of the day, different people in terms of mentality, in terms of traits, but I think we shared a good deal of common values, which is important. So that you need to have compatibility on the values level, and then you can be as quirky as you want. This is the fun side of things, but on the value circle, you have to be really aligned.
So you think that the culture of Telerik that made everything stick was the values that you were sharing? Can you name like a couple of things that were important to you, so people might be missing?
Sure. Well, I think probably the two key things for me was on one level, respect and friendliness. So we would treat everybody really like friends, and that was honestly the case. We would not hide, in our own office, guarded by 2 secretaries, etc. You're one of the team. You're in the trenches when times are tough. We actually would sit in different room with different teams all the time, just to mix even more with people. So that was really important. We were not bosses and employees. We were colleagues, pretty much all on the same level, with very little hierarchical levels, especially in the beginning, which will actually provide for the second important aspect, and I think it's freedom and empowerment. Because I think that's probably one of the reasons why we, as a company, as a group of people, managed to produce so many innovations and to move at that speed, because we would just give the overall direction and go and tell to the teams, go fight, do what you do best, do it yourself. We actually structure teams as individual units which are more or less self-sufficient. That's one of probably of our most clever early ideas. So you would have everybody in a team that could deliver a product from A to Z. Developers, QA engineers, technical support engineers, marketing people. We didn't really have sales, but marketing, technical writers, whatever. So all that group, you can take it, put it outside of the company, and it can operate as a small company. So we were like a combination of many companies within one big company, with a very rough idea of a framework and one single overall direction, but then individually they were free to go make mistakes. We've done a ton of mistakes, don't get me wrong, but that was compensated by creativity, quality, speed, and the feeling of purpose and feeling of empowerment within people. They were really not imposed, do this because your manager thought so. We said, okay, go see this competitor, go kill it. And they would do whatever is needed for this to happen. And that was amazing. Again, it was not something that we read in books. We just felt it this way because we as personalities were not, managers. We wanted to be like, inspirational leaders, so to say, knowing that we don't know a lot, but we have this feeling and purpose in our hearts, and we want to build something great, gather people around it, even if we're not really prepared professionally to do it, because many people were very young. Back in those days, there was no community whatsoever, so you have nobody to ask for advice. So we banged our heads in many, many walls all the time, but this drive was really compensating for all the mistakes and allowed us to really grow as a very vibrant organism that actually resulted in a very successful world-leading company as well. And it is even today the case.
Yeah, and a part of that, so many people from your team went on their own entrepreneurial journeys, quite successful ones, I must say. And I believe that you basically explained it why, because you had small companies, small units, battle units within the big company that was just giving a direction. And
absolutely, and I would add to that one other aspect. Fortunately, due to different circumstances, our company came into existence at the right time also. So typically this plays a big role as well. But we were competing from the get-go with the best in the world. So being the best in Bulgaria would not cut it, because our competitors, most of them were from the States, from Silicon Valley. So you had to become better to be able to be competitive at that level. And now when you're on your own to start your own company, those guys who were formerly colleagues of others, they've played this game already. So they have a good deal of experience already of how you actually battle with the best in the world. And this is obviously evident by the trajectories of how companies started by colleagues are exploding. But of course, I'm a little bit biased here. I love the guys and girls, so I'm always really passionate about their success.
How would you define the stage of the development of the entrepreneurship ecosystem in Bulgaria right now?
I'm really happy with how things are developing. We are really experiencing, I think, exponential improvement. As I mentioned, the level of knowledge and professionalism these days is really impressive. The sense of community and readiness to share your experience is also very high. So people really open, talk to each other, share knowledge, and trying to be collectively more successful rather than fighting with each other, because they're not really competitors, besides competing for talent, but that will always be the case. But then I think we are also little by little putting together all the necessary elements for a really vibrant community. You have great startups, some with already pretty impressive levels, funding levels, or even exits. We have a great deal of venture funds. We have international venture funds, including American ones, some of the best ones, already looking into Bulgaria, working with companies here. You have, physical spaces, co-working spaces, clubs. You have specialized media, etc. So educational programs towards entrepreneurship, technology, etc. So all those elements are important so that the magic happens. And 10 years ago we had like 2 of those, and then another one was added. And these days I think we have no excuse for not being successful, because we have a very, very good fundament. Of course, there are some aspects which require more fundamental, I guess, changes or evolution of the country and the society. One such aspect, of course, is the evolution of the educational system. But I'm fully aware and not delusional that this is a complex system that takes time to evolve and change. But we've seen examples globally that if this is a sort of a really key governmental policy, it could be done. It's been done in Singapore and in many other countries. So really, Bulgaria as a country has a handful, not too many areas where it has some true competitive differentiation on a regional and even global level. And we should really invest efforts and resources in those directions rather than trying to be better at other things that we can never be. So I think, the tech ecosystem and the entrepreneurial ecosystem has never been really a focal point of the government. We all know the eyeballs and the money were elsewhere. The legal framework also was not really supporting what's happening and what can really become a powertrain for Bulgaria. So what I want to see further as a supporting fundament for our startup ecosystem is more both evolution and changes in the educational system. We already talked about this. And then more systematic support and understanding and dialogue between the government and the stakeholders here, because we think that with the support of the government we can see the ecosystem get on another level. It's amazing to see the work of the BESCO, the Startup Association. It's another element that was lacking a few years ago. Now we have even that. So they're doing an amazing job exactly in policy making, in educating political parties, ministries, the government, empowerment as to what are the pain points and what should be passed as a legal framework, so that not so much that we are at an advantage, but to eliminate some disadvantages that we currently have and which are putting us sort of in a not so favorable position compared even to some of our neighbors, compared even to some neighbors which are not in the EU. For example, some of the some elements of the legal framework is in Serbia is much better than ours, which doesn't make any sense. So we have a lot of catching up to do.
But we're, as you said, we are on a climbing end. It's climbing. The ecosystem is getting better and succeeding more and more. How can we make sure that this impacts other spheres of society? How can this success impact and make a change to other walks of life?
Yeah, certainly. Well, I think, again, exposing the good practices, the really noble and honest way of doing business, which we see in the technology and the startup ecosystem, is something that some other areas of society can borrow. So sharing more good news, better practices is certainly one way. And another way is if we just double down on, again, something in which Bulgaria can be competitive, this would provide the economic benefits that would then provide money for investing in other areas of society which are underfunded, including education. Compared to the average level of budget as a percentage of the total GDP, Bulgaria is severely underfunded compared to the average EU level. So, but in order for this money to come from somewhere, you need to really double down in the economic sectors which can provide this value added, which are export oriented and can produce this money, because we cannot print it. We should get it from somewhere. And this could be the tech ecosystem in my view.
Product companies.
Product or services, doesn't matter. We need both, but we need businesses with high value added, export oriented, because Bulgaria is a small country and a small market. We need to be looking outside, that's for sure. But we also need to be smart, because we cannot and should not be competing with, say, some of the Asian countries, which are more of a body shop kind of thing, because we don't have enough people. So we need to be, again, doubling down on education, really providing value-added products, value-added services in a smart way, competing with the best in the world. We have proven that this could be done. We have many companies who are now leading or in the top 5 globally, coming from Bulgaria. So if we just see more like this, it would certainly spill over to the rest of the society for sure.
Do you believe that, like you were mentioning, that the Asians have high body numbers as well, which is their unique USP, but what is our unique USP here in the Southeastern Europe region? You can go to Bulgaria, you can go for the region as well. It would be great to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I think in Bulgaria, in the region, we enjoy a high level of loyalty and integrity in people. Again, comparing to other places in the world, because at Telerik we had 11 offices throughout the world, from Palo Alto to India, Sydney. So I have sort of my observations, and not only from Telerik, of course. Even if you take, say, Silicon Valley, I mean, people switch jobs like this, which is horrible for companies. Here, I think there's a much higher sense of attachment and engagement as to what the company is doing. This sense of purpose. People are more loyal and more diligent, which again is provides this level of a little bit higher security, if you will. And predictability in businesses. So the mentality of the workforce, I think, is better compared to many parts of the world. And of course, it's still true that we are really good at the STEM and engineering disciplines. Although there's a lot to be desired from, again, the educational institutions, but this is a fact. So it is something, again, which is probably the reason why the tech ecosystem originated back in the days and gained tractions, because even during socialism, Bulgaria was one of the tech centers of excellence in the Soviet and socialist bloc. Western digital hard drives were produced in Bulgaria. Actually, Bulgaria was the #1 producers of hard drives in the world, and also in terms of software development and just engineering, we had some tremendous technology. So that provided the fundamentals for the initiation of our tech ecosystem, I would say, and also the strong focus on STEM back in the days in school. So we got the ecosystem as it is today, but we should not take it for granted. That's why it's really important on a country level, on a governmental level, to really form a strategy around some key vectors where we have a shot and where we have already some inertia. This should be supported because, our neighbors are also gaining traction. Greece, Romania, Serbia, I mentioned earlier, are doing really well in terms of tech. So we need to keep going to be competitive, but I firmly believe that Bulgaria and especially the region could truly become the Silicon Valley of the East. Why not? It's already sort of happening, but we need a little bit more cultivation and more professional governance and catering to this, so that it becomes sustainable and truly goes into the future.
Awesome. As one of my favorite questions would be our recursive question.
Okay.
It is a question that's coming from our previous guest. And the question would be, let's say you have built a majorly successful company like UiPath and you have just exited it. How are you going to invest the money in the growth of the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Bulgaria? We're talking about the unicorn type of money.
Sure, yeah. Well, again, I would try to supplement all those necessary elements that we said are needed for an ecosystem. Obviously, direct capital is the easiest thing. You can provide capital for companies, but I would double down on educational programs specific to the tech and entrepreneurial ecosystem. I would double down on media. I would double down on policy making. And probably the biggest portion would go to just generic education, because this will provide, again, return not only for this segment but just overall. So I think that's probably the best way to invest money. Of course, they need to be governed right and put into work in the proper way, with the proper, as I said, KPIs and impact analysis. But yeah, I mean, it's not a rocket science. You need a few ingredients, and whichever of them are weak or not as strong, you put funding, and not only funding, but rather resources to make them better. Try to attract talent from abroad or just from whatever to really elevate and strengthen those elements of the community.
This was amazing how you think about investing in, like, not only money but effort, but also for making sure that this investment sticks and makes an actual impact. Would you mind having like a question to the next guest so we can share it with him on our next podcast here at the Recursive? So this is a tradition that we will try to implement and stick to, because guests like you have amazing ideas for questions. So what would be your recursive question to the next guest on our podcast?
Okay, here's one. If tomorrow you're the Prime Minister, what should you do in the next 12 months?
Super. Just to put an end to our conversation, an open end, I would like, we have a final question that we give every one of the guests that are sitting here with us. You've already done so much for the ecosystem and for Bulgaria in general, but what would you like to be remembered for?
That's a tough one. Well, I think for me it's very important to be remembered not by somebody who achieved some success, but also I really hope that, very soon this will be passed by other guys many times over, but rather like somebody who was sort of a catalyst for something much bigger, an auxiliary force that helped others, that helped an avalanche really go down the hill. I think that would be
awesome. That's a great answer. Thank you, Svetozar, for being here with us today. Thank you for being with the Recursive podcast. Please follow us and subscribe in your favorite streaming platform.
Tune in next week for the Recursive podcast. Irina talks to the serial entrepreneur and investor Mircea Vadan.
It's all these things that we pile up in our society through our processes and in our society, because we don't actually see another model of existing. And this is a challenge that I see in America, in Western Europe, in Europe in general, and all these very technologically influenced societies. While my belief is that we should use the technology to benefit humanity, not to become some slaves of technology. And all these things that happened and we see this. I met vice presidents of LinkedIn or investors or startup founders in the same sessions with telemedicine. So it was, what are you doing here? So they came actually from Silicon Valley to clean themselves.
And if you're just as passionate about innovation as we are, hit subscribe for the Recursive podcast on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. We're everywhere.